D was released in April of 1995. Honestly, when I think of D, I immediately think of the original PlayStation. It was one of those titles that made me want a PlayStation fiercely. Unfortunately, when I finally got a chance to play it, it was far from what I expected. For whatever crazy reason, I saw D as a title and immediately assumed that it was somehow related to Doom. What can I say? I was 12. When I played it, I was greeted with a very slow burn. There was no running and gunning. There weren't even any weapons that I saw. Instead, I was essentially dropped into the middle of a dark version of Myst, which, given that I love Myst, D became one of my favorite lazy day horror titles. Laura Harris, a college student, is informed that her father, Dr. Richter Harris, has barricaded himself in the Los Angeles hospital, of which Richter is the director. It is believed that Richter has killed several hostages, but why? Why has this well-respected and quiet man suddenly become a madman? Laura rushes from San Francisco to LA. For whatever reason, Laura is allowed to enter the hospital. Laura enters the hospital and discovers a scene of carnage. There are several dead individuals that have likely been killed by her father. Cautiously, she explores the hospital waiting area. As she moves deeper into the hospital, she finds herself transported into what appears to be another world. The palatial setting she finds herself in is a stark contrast to the darkness of the hospital. Or is it? A disembodied voice calls to Laura.
Laura. Laura. Laura. Laura. This is your father. Laura, go back. You must not cross over to this side. This is another world born of my own mind. Laura, go back. Come further and your world will be closed off from you. Laura, I'm...
So, Laura's father wants her to go back before she finds herself trapped in whatever world this place is. Here's a note about gameplay. I know I've said it before, but I feel like it bears repeating. This game is slow. I don't just mean thematically. I mean everything moves slow. Pick a direction, wait for the animation to play out. Perform an action, wait for the animation to play out. From that standpoint, the game does get stressful because there is no save or pause feature, and there is also a time limit. Laura has a clock in her inventory which shows the time ticking away. The game gives the player 2 hours to reach the conclusion, which in my experience is enough to finish it with a little extra just in case. So, now the player will find themselves waiting for FMVs to play, all while a clock ticks down. It is safe to assume it will become common practice replaying sections of the game over and over until the player has memorized every step and every puzzle. Soon the game will be a breeze and seem much more like watching a movie. Laura moves deeper into what appears to be a mansion or a castle and begins encountering unnatural and disturbing scenery. Traps and torture devices are tucked away in every corner. Bodies of victims are also found left to rot in many of these places as well. What I still question is just who these people are, and where exactly do they come from? Since this place is a place constructed in the doctor's mind, are these bodies people that were murdered in the hospital, or are they also products of his imagination? I don't feel like this is ever made completely clear. Laura will now encounter puzzles. These puzzles are far from difficult. They usually involve following some basic clues that will tell Laura exactly what to do, like opening drawers in a certain order to find the handle that will unlock a path, or match a disc to a particular layout found in a painting. Real basic environment puzzles. But the puzzles don't seem to be designed to stump the player. They are more of a tool to push the player down the path of the narrative. As Laura encounters the puzzle, she will also discover beetles. These peculiarly colored insects unlock what are presumably repressed memories. Finding all of the bugs is not a requirement. It just seems to flesh out the story a little bit more. In the first memory, a person that appears to likely be Laura's mother is eating dinner. After a few flashes of the letter D, the memory flashes to Laura's apparent mother, holding her hands up in a defensive position. Who is she defending herself from? Laura's father? Follow the clues and clear the path blocked by the spikes. This will uncover a doorway to the next section. This door has an interesting lock, and the key Laura found earlier does nothing. Stuck? Laura's mirror may provide insight. The clue here will lead her to a safe. This is one of the most frustrating puzzles for me. The timing to set the combination is tricky for me. Crack the combination and grab the new inventory item. Head back to the door and move on to the next section. Laura will now be trapped deeper into the castle, or mansion. In the first room she finds herself in, she discovers another beetle. Same dinner table, same defensive hand position, but this time it's a little more clear that the player is watching this all through the eyes of Laura. Laura picks up a knife and approaches her mother. Laura comes out of the memory in a panic. Back to clues, puzzles, and more bodies. Laura's father will once again break through with his disembodied voice and offer yet another warning.
Laura, what are you doing? Go back. Now. Laura, you can't stop me. Leave the hospital. Quickly. If you do not, you'll never be able to return to your own world. Do you understand, Laura? Quickly!
Once again, he warns that Laura should go back and leave this place. I remind you that even if she wanted to leave, there's a giant boulder blocking the exit. The player will now solve some more puzzles and work their way into the rotating room. In my opinion, this is one of the weakest puzzles. It's a matter of rotating the wheel and in turn the room. Rotate the wheel a certain number of times to line up the correct doorways. The most logical option here is to count rotations, and honestly, for me, taking notes helped. At some point here, Laura may encounter another beetle, which will flesh out further these strange memories. Laura is stabbing her mother. More flashes of the letter D. Laura will find herself moving back and forth between the rotating room and other puzzle rooms, all the while double checking your notes and doing the best you can to keep track of your position on the circle. Oh wait, here comes another disembodied voice.
Laura. 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 Soon I will no longer be the man you know. I can feel my control slipping away. Quickly, before that happens, you must leave here. I want you, of all people, to be safe from me. Laura, there's nothing I can...
He still warns that Laura should turn back, but this time he warns that he is changing and that he wants Laura to be safe from him. Eventually, you'll finally rotate the room and come to the one and only combat sequence in the game. Hello, QuickTime events. Time to fight a suit of knight's armor. If you fail, you fall. Don't worry, you can't die. You'll just climb out of the well and fight again. Once Laura finishes the fight, she'll acquire a sword. Finally, a weapon. Oh wait, the sword is a key. Well, that was fun, I guess. Crack the Zodiac puzzle, move on, backtrack to a room you may have encountered earlier. It's the room with the treasure chest. In the chest, Laura finds a flintlock pistol. Yet again, Dr. Richter reaches out to Laura.
Laura. Laura. Laura. Laura. Soon I will be transformed. When that happens, my new self will have need of you. This other self is one I cannot control. It is he who has done these horrible things. Laura, leave here. He wants you.
He warns that there is another self within him. This is who has caused so much pain and created this alternate reality. The other self is taking over and will need Laura once the transformation is complete. Turns out, the pistol is used to destroy the stained glass window. So much for it being a weapon. Looks like it's another type of key. Climb the tower and move on.
Laura. 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 Do not come to me. The one who I am to become needs blood for the change to be complete. You have seen what he will do, and it is your blood that he wants most. Laura, we are cursed. In our veins flows the blood of Dracula.
The doctor warns that he needs blood to complete his change. Laura and her father are descendants of Dracula, and by this point, the fourth memory will be unlocked. So, Laura stabbed her mother to death, ate her flesh, and drank her blood. Dracula's genetics are very strong. The player moves on to the final puzzle. As frustrated as I was with the save puzzle, the gear compounded that frustration 100-fold. There is apparently an easy way to complete this, but I never figured it out. I just took a brute force approach. When Laura comes face to face with the portrait of her mother, she is teleported to the room where her father has been waiting. It is here that the doctor explains it all.
So, Laura, you've come. Now I will tell you everything. Hear me and leave before the one who is not me can emerge. Laura, in our veins flows the blood of Dracula. The time of change comes to all of his blood. It starts with lust for the strange. Then comes the desire for human flesh to make the change complete. Yes, Laura, that time came for you as well. I erased the memory, so you have forgotten. When Dracula took control of you, with those very hands you killed your mother. It is our fate to be accursed. And now you know you must leave. I feel myself changing. I want your flesh, Laura. Listen to what I say. It is your flesh that I need, just as you needed your mother's. Come to me!
The moment of change begins. Will she approach her father and help him complete his change? Or will she use the pistol one final time? If Laura chooses to strike down the doctor, the castle realm will vanish, and the hospital will return to normal. The end. D was developed by Warp Studio under the command of Kenji Eno. Warp was all about unknown at the time. That being said, a game with cannibalistic themes was a bit of a gamble. There was even fear that because of the cannibalism, the game wouldn't be produced. To get around that concern, Eno decided to keep all of the game's cannibalism sequences a secret. What Eno did next was a stroke of brilliance. Upon completion of the game, he handed off a copy for approval that was stripped of all the more violent content. When it came time to submit the master for manufacturing, he intentionally missed the deadline. His punishment? He had to hand-deliver the game himself, which is exactly what he wanted. While he was on the plane to the US, he swapped out the clean disc for the true version. Mission accomplished. The ill-fated 3DO was the first console to get a port of the game, and later found its way onto all the major platforms. Overall, D's reception was warm, with the only real complaint being that sluggish gameplay. And I must admit that I agree with that assessment. This is one of those games that I return to anytime I find myself with a few hours to kill, and a taste for something with a tad darker theme. Myst is similar to me, only without the dark theme. Both are narrative driven, weaved together with environmental puzzles. I'd have to admit, as much as I enjoy D, Myst accomplishes its goal in a more elegant way. As elegant as Myst is, D still has a charm. The story's clunky and weird, but I like it. The game moves so slow it becomes frustrating, and frankly, sometimes it's a little unfun. And yet here I am recommending it. It reaches back to a time where cinematic stories and FMV games were a fresh game idea. It touches something from gaming history that I think everyone can find some appreciation for. And frankly, the game can be found so cheap on GOG or Steam, there's little excuse not to try it. Thank you very much for watching. Please come back next time.